Greetings everyone, recently I was hanging out on Discord with friends and one of them threw me a challenge. Could I complete Baldur's Gate 3 on the highest difficulty as solo character? The condition was to do it on the first attempt. This prompted me to come up with perhaps the most versatile build in the game, absolutely not relying on allies, rests, and furthermore, gaining an advantage from working alone without short or long rests. In addition to the build itself, I'll share strategies I developed during subsequent solo honor mode playthroughs that I recorded after the challenge, using which you can turn all this difficulty into a big one choke. I even tried a full squad of 4 characters using this build, and it was really effective too. Without dragging it out, I'll say that the scariest part of whole playthrough is the first location. Nautiloid is a place where you can't avoid battles, that leaves you no opportunity to prepare and set up any advantage. And since I started playing as Astarion, who is rogue by default, I had a lot of chances to get punched in the face, literally. Let me explain why I choose Astarion for a solo playthrough. That's all that needs to be said. Through heaven and earth, there is no other character who can increase their chance to hit, survivability, and dice rolls simultaneously just for biting some goblin in the beginning. And I'm not even mentioning Ascension in the third act. If the bite buff is something that some athletic wood elf can compete with, 1d10 necrotic damage boost is out of competition. Oh, and Astarion can also choose the illusion cantrip. Especially in the beginning, it's perfect for clearing some problematic locations. About the build, we take Ranger for heavy armor proficiency, fire resistance, initiative with an additional attack, sharpshooter feat, and extra attack at level 5. Then Rogue for extra bonus action, dexterity feat, and here I had 2 options in mind. The first is the defense version, where I level up Rogue to level 7 to get protection from area of effect spells. With evasion, regular fireballs, reactions from dragons, explosions, they just won't damage the character. And even the most powerful spell in the game, casted by Boss Dragon in third act, will only deal 50 damage to us, often dealing a pitiful 10 damage if we roll the dice successfully. The second build option is through maximizing damage. Instead of Rogue, we multiclass into Fighter for an increased critical strike chance and action surge, which can be easily restored with Angelic Potion that you can use before every important boss fight, for example. I chose the defense version, primarily because action surge will only really matter in the very last fight, and also I'm just incredibly lazy to steal Angelic Potions. About the build items, of course I can show you these 3 pictures of how my character looked in first, second and third acts, but I think it would be nice to show how I acquired this equipment by encountering minimal resistance thanks to my strats. In the first non-Nautiloid battle, I decided to simply hide and wait until Zevlor solves all of the problems by himself. Then I took a free tadpole, transformed into a drow, and collected all sorts of buffs in the goblin camp, from Wallace Eye to Mark of the Absolute and Lovitor's Blessing. Turned out that the charlatan background which Astarion has gives a lot of opportunities to gain inspiration just by deceiving everyone, so those dice rolls were not a problem for me. If you're a super perfectionist, you can steal the Sylvanas idol and give it to Mole. For this you'll need to use either Arrow of Darkness or Fog Cloud to do it unnoticed. After a thieving, quickly teleport away from the crime scene. But I think it's too risky, and I don't think a small amount of XP is worth it. And first things first, I decided to gear up. In any solo playthrough, the most important thing is to find the simplest way to loot as much money as possible. You can do this just like in probably all other games, through good old thievery. Considering the place where I was born, I know for sure, even in real life, this is the best option. To become a successful thiever, we need a smuggler's ring, a talisman that gives us guidance, those goblin gloves from the very first fight, and the shapeshifter's ring, obtained from the strange ox, one of the most dangerous enemies of the first act, by the way. Don't even think about fair fight, especially in a close combat. Ambush the ox and try to kite him by attacking and retreating. So what's left is to find whom to steal from. We have only 2 options, Aaron and Mole. Their advantage is that they can't permanently kill us. Aaron's pros that he's richer and has scrolls with healing potions in his assortment, which will be useful later on. However, all of this is overshadowed by a huge minus. Aaron will aggro on you if you fail a pickpocket, which will force you to spend a lot of time escaping this fucking prison dotted with mushroom mushroom mines in case he knocks you out. Maul, on the other hand, will simply run away and calm down in case of a failed pickpocket. You can refresh the merchant's assortment by long resting, or by resetting your level with Wither's help. In the game, with each level change, the assortment is updated. This allows me to quickly loot 3000 gold and some thieves' tools. With all this money, I descend into Underdark, carefully jumping over mushrooms to avoid fighting with local bullet. I take the best starting boots from this little gnome and head to the best merchant of the first act. Why the best? Because she sells a ring that adds +2 to your damage. Objectively, that's the best ring in the game. On top of that, I'm buying 2 hand crossbows and archer's gloves from the goblin. Don't forget about Demon's Shield, and if possible, Elixir of Bloodlust. Spam a few long rests to skip all plot scenes with tadpoles and Skeleritas Fell if you place Dark Urge. And from this moment until the beginning of third act, you won't need long rests. You can safely drink the elixir. It will be the first of many buffs lasting until the long rest that we'll receive during the game, boosting our damage to indecent levels. About my Myconid location, by the way, not many knows that by destroying these roots, you can get free XP. You just need to pass the perception check. Rogues with high wisdom have almost 100% chance on them. Next, Roland. We need to convince him to stay with Tieflings. I haven't managed to do that without needing to roll a dice. I respect my character into a barbarian. Cause it's maximum difficulty, I have no saves and can't afford to mess up here. After all, convincing Roland is important to get a very useful item in the future. The initial equipment is obtained. Time to finish the first act. Well, not whole first act, only quests that you fail when you go to the Rosamorn or Moonrise Towers. I immediately came up with 2 strategies. The first option is to quickly blow up all the goblin leaders, thereby completing the Tieflings quest and proceeding to the second act, where you're just showered with overpowered loot. To do this, we make our character into a sorcerer. Take a fire cantrip, illusion cantrip if you don't have it. Spells like Magic Missile, Feather Fall, Jump, Quicken Spell at level 3 and Invisibility. Collect all the barrels in the Temple of Selûne, in the closed room of the Goblin Camp too. Boom. Granny, 4 barrels enough for her? Now quickly get rid of Minthara and Rexlin. Of course you can bother and pick up the right amount of barrels to reduce Minthara to low HP and to knock her out, and then find her in the second act. But if you're playing solo, it's unclear. Why would you do that? I preferred to use the illusion cantrip to bait Minthara with Rexlin into one corner and blow them up with all the barrels I had left after killing Granny. If Rexlin with his decent amount of HP survives, you can finish him off with Magic Missile. After that, casting Invisibility, I easily leave the scene of the crime. Of course, my greed reminded me to loot both mini-boss corpses for tadpoles. Congratulations, we've speedrun through the first act. You can immediately move on to looting the best equipment in the game. Especially helpful in this will be the Sorcerer class, allowing you to skip fights like the one with Githyanki at the entrance to the monastery, or with those skeletons. And of course, Jump Spell, together with Featherfall, is the fastest way to travel in the game. More sequential option I came up with for those who don't want to immediately leave first act and use those disgusting barrels. Loot this amulet in the room with the Ogre from the Goblin Camp and sail to Grymforge, getting a solid amount of XP for talking to Dwegas. In Grymforge itself, I loot the armor, sneak past the skeletons, loot the mithril, starting the fight with Grym, teleporting up thanks to my wonderful amulet. And here are 2 options. You can use the illusion cantrip to lead Grym towards the hammer and then just shoot the lever. It's faster and you get additional XP for these methods. Or you can slowly kill him with your crossbows. 10 minutes. Yeah, don't forget occasionally refilling lava by shooting this wall. In general, killing Grym bring you about 1000 XP with the best armor for the first 2 acts. Tossing some Dwegas that you lure to that cliff by minor illusion bring you to at least half of the 5th level. You also get a bunch of XP for various dialogues with the Githyankis, with Boal by visiting the Ethel Cave and instantly exiting it. If you have a lot of damage, you can farm turrets in the Underdark Tower. It's like 40 XP per turret. It also would be nice to kill some random NPCs in Goblin's camp, like the Levitor dude. He also possesses a pretty nice mace that passively gives us resistance. Don't forget about Dwegas at the docks. With Boots of Speed it's pretty easy to ambush them and flee until all of them die. Also, Myconids give a nice buff for killing them. Buff lasts until long rest, cause you're playing with the this strat, you can get it now. Just don't long rest until the third act, please. Not many know, after you save Floric, you can attack her gods. If Floric doesn't become your enemy, you can kill all red fists, have some nice XP from them, and this will not impact any quests. And thus, even without skipping the first act, you will quickly reach the OP 5th level, with which wiping out all the local population will be incredibly easy. Here's my fight with True Soul Near. Don't forget to take Barkus in your camp. Whole bear family and Gnoll Mummy. The only challenge game could offer me was the Goblin Leaders. With them, the main thing is not to be stingy on fleeing and returning to the fight, to surprise them and getting the bonus attack from Ranger's Darkstalker subclass. Especially it's important when dealing with Minthara. She can cast Paralysis spell, and Paralysis is the one thing we can easily counter only from second act, so be careful. Basically, what can be said? The strategy with explosive barrels is faster and safer, but if you're really into sequential playthroughs and don't want to rush through acts, quick Grymforge strategy will suit you better. Officially, second act. To avoid losing Elixir of Bloodlust and Myconid buff, I refuse to rest with the Tieflings and head to the Darklands. Here, as I already mentioned, you can skip the fight with the skeletons, either by invisibility spell / potion, or just by running past them. After all, my Astarion has boots of speed. First, use the regular dash, then click heals and let the bone friends eat dust. Okay, in this act we need to get all these items from traders. That's around 18,000 gold. You can get this money either by stealing from Araj Oblodra or from Daman. They are not as good as Maul, but they are among a few traders who won't attack you if caught you stealing. Instead, they just call the guards, who can be easily eliminated. After killing a guard, just flee from a trader, then come back and continue pickpocketing. If all the guards on location is dead, Oblodra or Daman just run a little bit, then teleport back to their spot. If right now you're not strong enough to kill the guards, just lure Daman away from other NPCs using the illusion cantrip, and it would be a problem for him to call guards. And you remember these unpleasant situations when traders start to look at you, preventing character from pickpocketing. You can buy this cloak from Mattis, and for Cloud that he'll create from Disengage will save you from Merchant's Eyes, making the process of gold farming more convenient. And yeah, the Graceful Cloth is also higher your chances to successfully steal items, so you can buy it too. In case you're too lazy to farm such a huge amount of gold, limit yourself to just this list of items. Those left stuff you can simply loot from the traders by knocking them out. A very useful trick, by the way. I often see people on the street with coke. Because of sanctions nowadays, this shit costs around $2 per bottle. An honest person clearly doesn't have enough money for such a thing. And don't forget to use Drake Throat Glaive to buff the crossbow. A little trick: if you take the sorcerer class from Withers, you can buff both crossbows at once. Thunder damage is best for this sack, by the way. A little off top: if you are low leveled and have problems with passaging to Moonrise Towers, and you already failed a dialogue with a spider, a little tip: swap your class to a strong Abjuration Wizard, and with Jump spell, Curse won't have time to kill you. Also, in Moonrise Towers, in Balthazar's room, lies a little version of Lantern. Okay, gear is collected. It's time to gather buffs that lasts until long rest. Until the third act, I mean, yeah. The Mushroom buff we get by killing Duergas near the docks. 1d6 damage boost, pretty solid for a start. The next one is Morning Lord's Radiance. But wait, if we get it right now, it will be impossible to fight with Shard Knights. So first of all, a quick clearing of Shard Temple. This place is probably the best source of experience in the game. The most important thing at the beginning is to loot the buff for necrotic damage resistance in this room and not die in this trial. The most dangerous shit in the game, by the way. A bunch of people ended their solo runs here. Most reliable strategy is to spill blood in the bowl, cast the jump buff on yourself, and jump along this safe road, praying to God that your character doesn't have a heart attack today. The point of this temple is these orbs that you absolutely don't want to break, because they spawn warriors that carry a lot of XP. First, I recommend clearing these guys at the entrance, then visit these little guys at the trial, and finally go to Balthazar. I hope by this point you have about 20 Thieves' Tools or 1 Knock Scroll, because first of all, after the cutscene, you need to open Balthazar's room. Run in there and hide. When Merkel's fat lapdog will be in the thick of battle, far from us, you can start attacking him and his underlings. When he become hostile, hide further away from the fight, and observe how in passive mode we get free XP for every dying person in this massacre. Fun fact, after a week from this video release, I'll die in a prison, so don't forget to like, comment and subscribe while I'm still breathing. When the fight came to an end, if you've hidden correctly, that is, went into stealth in one place and then moved as far away from that place as possible. If you did that, remaining enemies will simply lose sight of you, and the fight will end. If you failed like me, don't worry, our ranger subclass has an invisibility spell. Don't forget to finish off the remaining enemies, abusing surprise mechanic. After clearing the chariots, I can finally put the scattered weapons on pedestals just like in the screenshot and get a holy damage buff. And of course, don't forget to clear out all the covels here. For more experience, I also looted the legendary mace itself. I need experience, cause the 6th level is fucking game changing. Why is the 6th level is so important? Cause it opens up the best assortment of arrows that will easily carry you through the entire game, leaving no chance for any opponent. Even on my solo playthrough, just steal these arrows along with the money from Damon using the old method. Additionally, you can buy more arrows from this Githyanki. She sells them in even greater quantities, but she attacks when caught you stealing, so it's better to just buy arrows from her. By the way, don't underestimate the arrow of transposition. Main boss of the second act has frightening ability that prohibits you from moving. Also, boss can pull our archer towards itself. For such cases, this arrow and even better, the scroll of Misty Step will be perfect. I understand that our ranger has a built-in Misty Step, but Ketheric was seriously buffed in the recent patches, so the battle will likely go on for many turns, and teleportation may be needed up to 6 times. Also, this Githwander, alone in first 2 acts, sells the best healing potions in the game. Don't forget to buy it. Well, I collected about 40 arrows of many targets. For the second act, this was more than enough, especially since I'll only use purchased arrows a couple of times in situations where I need a lot of damage due to some time restrictions. Otherwise, it's no problem to kill everyone with just a right click. So I have arrows. That means I won't be using Wither's services this act anymore, so I can get a buff that disappears when you respec. Just talk to Wargas, do what he says, enter the prism, talk there, and get the bless that lasts indefinitely. Usually at 6th level I prefer to use invisibility potion to avoid fighting with this boss, cause Wargas is too strong in honor mode. But did I gather those arrows for nothing? I'll take the risk. If you quickly exit the prism, press the stealth mode and hide in no vision, you can suddenly surprise this Gith squad, and if you're lucky, kill Wargas the first turn. But even if you're not, here's the best tactic. First, attack him with a bonus action and a rogue bonus shot that provokes him to use summon blades that you can easily destroy with arrow of many targets. If you successfully surprised his party, it won't be a problem to survive 1 turn against this anorexia embodiment and kill him next turn, and then kill his wonderful friends. If you used arrow of many targets, probably most of them already dead by an accident. If you don't want to risk with this boss, I remind you about invisibility potion. Just come back here at the 8th level. And with Cloak of Cunning Broom, fog is not only useful when you're stealing, it also helps with enemies with reactions. With this amount of damage that you get at 8th level, you'll obliterate this boss without any troubles. Or, in this game, there's some abuse that allows you to kill Wargas at any level literally. Just bait him with minor illusion to this door before going to the prism. Here you can attack his party, shoot the entire quiver, run into the door, and quickly return before Wargas heals. Using this strat, boss has almost no chance. From one of the Inquisitor's Githyankis, you can loot top tier headwear for damage maxing. It gives us arcane synergy when we inflict a condition. Because of this elite passive, we inflict conditions with each our attack. To make the diadem skill even more effective, visit the cursed lands, go to this secret basement, and pray to the statues that increase our stats. Specifically, get a buff for wisdom. Hag. Killed her purely for the bonus to dexterity, which you get by giving Myrina to her. Or if you're lucky, you can save Myrina, but I honestly prefer to sell her, mainly because of personal enmity to this redhead. Perhaps that was all possible enhancements of the second act. My buff panel already looks like my DM's. I think it's perfectly clear that both Nikakata and the Doctor are absolutely not dangerous. One runs into the edge of his location and cannot pass through, and the other endlessly erases dead nurses until he dies. But Geringa Thorm is a problem. She has a one-shot attack that deals damage depending on the amount of money in your pocket, and no matter how good your build is, she can easily one-shot you. So, before the fight I sent all the coins to the camp, and even after that, just in case, I keep 3 kilometers away from this boss. I don't want this bitch even have a little chance to hurt my pretty vampire. Same goes for the last quest of this act. So before going to save Night Song, I clear out all people in Moonrise Towers, because first, that's XP. The earlier you get it in the game, the better. Who the hell needs all this tons of experience when in 30 minutes you'll be in a third act? Secondly, the battle in the Moonrise Towers is long and stuffy. While I'll be watching all this fuss with harpers and cultists, I might lose concentration and make a mistake by accident. Like the prisoner from Green Elephant movie who tried to clear the toilet with a fork. After 22 minutes 31 seconds, I finally killed everyone in this castle, except for Ketheric and traders. After a couple more hours, I cleared everything that was in first 2 acts, knocking out all the quest characters and killing all the non-quest ones. For these actions, I was bestowed with the 9th level, on which I even managed to complete Halsin's quest tolerably well. Why am I even mentioning it? Well, before this quest, I didn't even use purchased arrows at all. I saved them until the third act, but the incredible number of meat that overwhelmed you during this tower defense forced me to use my multi-shot arrows. Ever since the mini-helicopter mission, I hate quests with the time limit, but that's nothing compared to how much I hate protecting someone in games. With this Halsin quest, by the way, in subsequent playthrough I had a very unpleasant bug, because the game is not designed for playing without long rests. After I, without participating in the Tiefling festival, immediately went to the second act, Halsin died right in the grove. Apparently the game thought that I didn't kill the goblin leaders, and therefore Halsin died according to the script, even while in a safe location. If you encounter a similar phenomenon, just talk to Halsin before going to the second act, then the script will be fixed. And Halsin, by the way, is actually quite a useful character, primarily because he's an elf, and elves, halflings and humans are the best sources of blood for Araj Oblodra. I play solos, so I can only have 1 blood potion from my Astarion, but if you play in a party, I would advise bringing all the characters you see on the screen to this draw check before the third act. Also, don't forget about crossbow possessed by this fat Orthon. If you play as Astarion and previously talked to Raphael about your scars, you'll get some info about power-up in the third act. Okay, I'm approaching the final boss of this location. Right now, I'm at level 10. My dearest friend, with whom I made the bet, is pretty nervous about what he sees on screen sharing. He didn't even know that at this point in the game it's theoretically possible to reach that level. Now fighting Ketheric, I clearly understood what my friend would have to do in case I complete the game without any deaths. He'll need to take a pack of condoms at the checkout. When they ring them up, return the item due to lack of money, then run to the office supplies department and on the same register ring up the polyethylene bags with a set of rubber that boomers use to tie the money. So as you can see, I start the fight, taking out the Lithid. If he charmed you, make 2 dashes and run as far as you can. On the next turn, Octopus will be dead. After the most dangerous enemy, kill other minions. Every one of them. Because of the old man's passive, enemies turn into some cocoon after death. And I need to spend another shot. But thanks to my 4th level Thief subclass, I have enough attacks for all of them, even without needing to use multi-shot arrows. With them, of course, everything would be faster. After clearing boss arena, release this perfectly hot 6'3" woman. As you can see, before I transition Ketheric to the second phase, I let him kill Night Song for fairness. After all, this is a solo run. In second phase, do as much damage as possible, heal your character when his health drops below half, and teleport away from the boss if he pulls you. Fortunately, if you followed the guide, we have enough teleports for 3 such bosses. Erase Ketheric from our screen, and now my favorite part, the third act. Here the developers really went all out to break the teeth of all solo gaming enthusiasts. They added a bunch of insane abilities to bosses, like the last boss Invulnerability, incredible damage from Raphael in Devil's form, and Mr. Sarevok's Enrage, which can deal up to 200 damage to a pretty heavily armored high HP chair. Of course, you can immediately dive into battles with bosses, but I prefer to not raise risks, so instead of getting into fights, I am in a hurry to collect the best equipment of the act. The most amusing thing is that to obtain it, you don't even need to fight anyone. As an example, Helldusk Boots, which don't allow enemies to throw you off the cliff. To get them, you just need to use invisibility. Go to Gortosh apartments and loot this chest. Next, right in the city, I visit Raphael's House of Hope to loot the best amulet for solo playthroughs. If you disarm the pedestal and don't get caught by the guards, after stealing the amulet, you can peacefully leave the location. Of course, I don't forget to pick up the second best crossbow in the game from this safe and haunted house. And right nearby is the House of Grief. In this wonderful place lies the most easily accessible permanent buff of the third act. All you need to do is get into the basement. Since I killed Shadowheart in the first act, passage is open to me by default. If Shadowheart is in your camp, you'll probably need to take her with you to be led through. Here's everything is just like with the boots. We need invisibility and plenty of thieves' tools. To pass all the mirror checks reliably, don't be lazy to turn into an intellectual cleric multiclassed into College of Lore Bard. With 4 inspirations, it's almost a guarantee that you can pass the checks. If you're paranoid about it, nothing stops you from using this gear to make your chances even better. Take thief memories and remove curse from yourself. If you don't want to leave even a chance for the game to kill you, go steal some noble stocks and arrows. And it would be nice to steal these pieces of armor from Daman and this cloak that gives enemies disadvantage on attacks on you. Very helpful on some fights like with Gortash. Also, if you decided to multiclass into a fighter version of the build for restoring action surges, steal some angelic potions from Necromancer Mummy at the circus. Renew Drake Throat Glaive enchantment. In third act, cold damage is the best according to the boss's resistances. And buffs. Lower your level at camp to 1 and donate some gold to the local god for a saving throws bonus. Of course, since I'm not going to take long rests, I take a sip of Araj Oblodra potion and take a buff from an elven whore. To get it, you need to pass Insight check. Make your character a 20 wisdom rogue and you get it for sure. The permanent bless buff. You can get it by buying a statue and long resting, but you lose all other buffs, so don't even think about this piece of rock. Just donate some item to the Sia Temple on the docks and get the same permanent bless. Okay, I'm ready to do some quests. First one is with Sarevok. I read this letter in Rivington, killed the dwarf at the banquet, read his scroll, took the pouch full of severed hands, lied to Sarevok, killed the elephant, and hooray, the best armor in the game is in my pocket. Thanks to the secret bar list vendor. Now Sarevok himself. As I mentioned before, this boss has one of the biggest potential damages in the game. But to get it, Sarevok needs a win condition, so that all the shadows sitting in the room with him die, then he can use Berserker's Rage, and surviving that is almost impossible. So that's why you need to start the fight from stealth and surprise Sarevok's minions and try to kill Baal spawn first. Surprising creates a situation where the shadows can't interfere the fight, and you don't need to kill them, thus preventing Sarevok go mad. This way boss gets destroyed easily. Since I choose Astarion, next I decided to go to the Cazador to get his Ascension buff. Plus 5 necrotic damage boost, you know. The boss was killed without any troubles, in which I was helped by the balanced armor, and don't forget about Helmet of Sarevok. You know, in Cazador's party there's an annoying mage who can inflict fear on you, and you'll have to go make coffee while Astarion is chewed on by bats for 10 minutes. It's a dangerous situation, and resistance to fear allows you to avoid it. Don't forget to take Rhapsody from Cazador's body. Yeah, it doesn't give us resistance to critical strikes, nor give us bonus initiative, like these 2 shields, but it boosts our damage pretty well. Next one is Orin. Now, jokes aside, she can be defeated solo and without unbalanced arrows of many targets. You just need to stand close to her, hit her, provoking her to counterattack, then heal yourself, then hit her again, heal, and so on until she dies. It turns out, for some reason, her invulnerability doesn't work on the first attack in your turn. So with 10 or 20 noble stocks, you can beat this boss without using arrows. I don't know why I did this, probably I wanted to tickle my nerves, because with arrows of many targets, it's too easy. In first turn you're taking out half of her support group, then just provoke her to counterattack, so that Baal doesn't curse you, and run away from her. The mechanic of Orin's legendary secondary ability is that if you don't provoke her to counterattack by shooting her while standing close, on the next turn you will simply die. As you can see, I'm dodged it, and on second turn I just killed all of her cheerleaders. If there's no one to shoot nearby them, you can lay out some food next to these guys and shoot at it. Without her support group, Bal doesn't apply curse on us, and Orin just die in a couple of turns. Gortash, it's like with Orin, if you didn't kill him in 2 turns, or if you surprise him in 3 turns, there is quite a chance that he'll just die from the curse he'll put on you. A fist hitting your head and dealing up to 200 force damage. Only a barbarian under a beer subclass rage can survive this. So if such a fist was put on you, eat the noble stock, it'll remove the curse. To avoid such risks, I decided to use an invisibility and speed potions, approached Enver closely so my ballast armor aura could work, and kill him in 1 turn. Oh, and I almost forgot, there is also a quest in the prison related to Gortash. I am easily saved everyone there while streaming with this build. After all, I'm playing without long rests, so my Astarion is buffed by the elf speed potion the entire 3rd act, and under such conditions, grabbing everyone out of the cells on the first turn is totally easy. And this Iron Crab boss. Honestly, it's even embarrassing to mention him, but okay. Most effective strategy against him is to use Near Messer with armor sold by Daman in 3rd act. It gives resistance to all physical damage. It's also extremely useful in all prolonged fights. For example, when you've already killed the boss through the ballast armor and now you're just fighting with default enemies, so you don't really need damage min-maxing. In that case, resistance that Damon's armor gives you looks extremely well. And yeah, this was a damage from boss's explosion. Who's next? Viconia. She's not even a full-fledged boss. From room where she's located, you can freely travel to the camp and surprise her over and over again, using Darkstalker bonus attack. Ah yeah, Raphael. Firstly, you can also catch him off guard and surprise too, if you use invisibility potion before the dialogue. Secondly, he doesn't have any damage at all if you don't break his pillars. Of course, if you break them, he can one-shot you. Survive this Scorched Ray is possible only for some wild-heart barbarians with Stallion aspects, and only after dashing. But if you even wanted to risk, with the damage this build have, you won't have time to break any pillars. The boss will simply die before that happens. As you can see, even his beguiling legendary action won't work on me, because I have arrows of many targets that easily bounce to Devil's Face with or without charm on a character. By this point, I think I've buffed and abused everything I possibly could. Proceeding to the final fight. Before the boat, a respect to more DPS version of the build, with fighter multiclass. I forgot to do that, but you don't want to. I'm equipping Rig Throat Glaive, so that I can immediately buff one of my crossbows upon transitioning to the astral plane. You see, developers thought it would be a very funny joke to take away all buffs from the player before the last fight, so some of them must be received again. So don't forget about Elixir of Bloodlust. Before the fights, also not unnecessary to have Raphael's armor and Balduran's helmet prepared. And definitely arrows for killing aberrations must be with you. Otherwise, you won't have enough damage against the brain. So, the fight on a square. It stands out with the presence of a huge number of low-level meat. They literally throw them at you in such quantities that watching their animations is equivalent to being attacked by a Dementor. All the joy is sucked out. Anyone who has watched goblins try to break through Raphael's armor doesn't laugh in the circus anymore. On my other playthroughs, I decided to transform into an Illithid to get buffs for additional attacks with bonus actions, and tried to deal with enemy groups one by one, which, as you understand, was a million times less stuffy than during the first run. And the brain itself. Firstly, I decided to clear out the crowd before rushing to the crown. After all, I have plenty of healing. Noble stocks come in handy here, to carelessly eat the crown's legendary actions. How the perfect fight would actually look like. I take off Raphael's armor, put the ballast one on top of the brain, immediately start shooting my clone, shooting Emperor, if you decided to be with Orpheus, or be solely Illithid like me, with aura of ballast armor. They die literally in 1 turn. If possible, don't get caught in Dragon's attack range. But even if you did, we'll have Helldusk boots, so we immune to fall prone. Fly to this position and kill the dragon. This position is good because the Illithid mages don't reach you here, and the dragon flies up near you and stands still. On the next turn, I take out the dragon with anti-dragon arrows. Because of my amount of noble stocks, I can tank Crown's damage as many turns as I want. After the reptile, I deal with the mages, and that's all. The brain itself. In solo playthrough, our damage is limited, so so I need to use these 5 turns as effective as possible. I approach the brain closely so that my aura from the armor works, load anti-aberration arrows into it, use bonus actions. If you play with fighter multiclass, use action search. Okay, on the next turn, the brain becomes immune to all damage we inflicted. Since you can damage it, you can engage in equipment management. Fly away from the brain, change Baldur's helmet to Helmet of Grit, you found in Khazadar Palace, to get additional bonus action, and take off Raphael's amulet to make your health lower. And on the next turn, when brain becomes vulnerable again, fly to him and, already reinforced by Helmet of Grit, deal even more damage to the brain than last time. Again, turn when the brain is invincible, heal your character to full HP, and on the last turn, just finish the brain. If you did something wrong, you can use Emperor's Lightning Spell or Orpheus's Help. I didn't need it, I killed the brain absolutely solo, but I won't tell anyone if you're not. Earlier I mentioned that I completed the game by using this build on 4 of my characters. If you're interested, here's how their items looked in the first act, the second, and the third. As you can see in that playthrough, the main emphasis was also on Astarion as the main damage dealer. I think this gear will be useful if you decide to make a whole party of characters who don't need a long rest or short rests. Also, playing in party allows you to gain blast buff in the crash at any level, cause playing with party allows you to use not buffed companions from the camp to steal items from vendors, without the risk of losing blasts when buffed characters spec. On top of that, cause in this build you don't make long rests, you can buff all your party with all those long rest spells. Only 2 times in playthrough, once in the first act, then at the third. And the whole game you will be under those buffs. First of all, make someone a cleric and give all these buffs to your party. Then hire mercenaries from the withers and take some useless companion from your camp, make them transmutation wizards, and give to your party stones that buff movement speed, along with long strider. So, like, comment and subscribe if you want more videos from me on this channel. Lately, the only thing I've been releasing is unedited stuff on my second channel, and I think I need to stop being lazy and do at least something on Toxic Feather.